If the forest ever calls you by name, don't answer. It's not the forest, it's the hunger inside it. We thought we were lost in the woods. We were wrong. We were inside something that wanted us to wander. I used to believe monsters were metaphors. Then the Wendigo learned my voice and gave it back to me. There's a house in the pines that looks abandoned. It isn't. It's just full. My name is Liam Carter, and I hadn't heard my own voice in days when I finally made it back to the ranger station. Not because my throat was gone, because the forest had stolen my voice, practiced with it, and learned to throw it through the trees. The ranger who opened the door said I looked like frost in human shape. He wrapped me in a blanket, set me under a lamp, and asked what happened to the others. I told him I'd answer when the lights were brighter. Even then, the shadows in the corners were too tall. If you're listening, let me give you the only advice that matters out there. Do not follow the sound of your name. The thing that lives in those woods knows how to return what you love in pieces. It wears hunger like a coat. It has a house, and the house has rules. We learned them too late. We were four: Liam and Maya, Ethan and Brooke. Two couples in late summer chasing a last camping trip before the weather turned mean. We joked about bears, ghosts, old legends. We were the kind of friends who could argue about nothing for hours. Whether the moon was an orange or a coin, whether coffee tastes better from a metal tin or a blue enamel mug. The trail we picked was unmarked, but walked, according to an online forum Ethan swore by. No cell service at the trailhead, only a laminated warning about staying on established paths. We laughed it off. The air had that pine-sweet coolness that makes you feel like you could walk forever. We hiked until the map on Ethan's offline app turned into a white sheet with green veins. A fog snagged on the branches, slow and silky. Not the wet kind that clings to your face, but the kind that makes distances lie. By afternoon, the sky took a pewter tone like it had swallowed a storm and was trying not to cough. Hang a right at the split, Ethan said. The creek's that way. We hung a right and never found the creek. Maya tapped her compass and frowned. It's off. Either it's broken or there's iron in the ground. She said it like a joke, but her eyes were calculating. Brooke squeezed her shoulder. We kept walking. By twilight, the forest grew taller. That sounds impossible, but that's how it felt. Like trunks had stretched while we blinked. We were surrounded by clawed bark and old scars, like something had been tapping and scratching long enough to learn patience. Let's set camp, Brooke said. We'll find the creek in the morning. That's when we saw the house. It appeared between white firs like a negative, as if someone had cut the shape of a house out of the woods. 2 stories, roofline crooked, boards silvery with age. No path to it, but the ground around the steps was tamped flat as if many feet had stopped there and then decided otherwise. Abandoned, Ethan said, but the word didn't sit right. Abandoned places look forgotten. This one looked remembered by something that didn't use doors the way we do. We argued, the campsite versus the porch. But a thin rain began, making our sleeping bags smell like wool and mistakes. I told them houses, even empty ones, have corners, and corners meant shelter. We went to the porch. The front door was half-latched, soft wooden creak. The smell inside was like cold pennies and damp stone, the scent of basements that have learned how to breathe. We clicked headlamps. Dust spun in our beams, but the dust didn't settle when we stood still. That bothered me. Dust likes the floor, not the air. We found a living room of collapsed couches and an iron stove with its mouth open. The wallpaper had a pattern of vines and antlers so faded you couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. A staircase leaned up the left wall like a broken spine. "Look," Maya said. A coat rack by the door held a single hunter's cap, perfectly dry. "Recent?" Brooke asked. "Or never left," Maya said. Ethan did a circuit, pretending not to be scared. "Found a kitchen. The sink's cast iron, there's a back door. And something else." He led us to a hallway with a framed mirror that had lost its glass and kept the frame. On the other side, a small door waited under the stairs. Cellar. The air that leaked from the gap between door and floor was colder than outside. It carried a perfume of old fur and long sleep. "Basement first," Ethan said, showing off. Brooke squeezed my arm. Maya handed me a little LED lantern. The cellar steps complained with every footfall. My lamp found racks nailed to brick walls, empty hooks, a matted pile of something like grass that was not grass. In the far corner, under a slumped shelf, a shape. "Don't," Brooke whispered as I moved closer. But I had to know. It was a body, curled on its side as if it had gone to sleep and forgot how to wake. Not a fresh horror. Dry, leathery clothes welded to skin. A journal lay under its hand. On its back, tucked between shirt and spine, a manila envelope. "Liam," Maya said softly. "Don't touch," but I was already lifting the envelope. It had a title stamped in red. Wendigo Field Dossier. The journal under the corpse's hand was bound with red string. The top line, "If the house found you, read this fast." Ethan tried to laugh. "Wendigo?" "Urban legends," the page crackled. Inside the envelope were photos, prints with glossy corners curling, of tracks that were long-toed like a human but wrong. Claw marks in bark higher than my head, trees stripped to white bone, a sketch of a creature with limbs like spears, and a ribs cage you could count to 12. Under the photos, a typed sheet. Rules of the house. Do not say each other's names above a whisper. Do not open a door if you hear a voice you love on the other side. If you find the gun, count your bullets, then cut that number in half. You will miss more than you think. Fire by seconds, not safety. If it starts to tap, 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 it is already teaching itself how you walk. Leave before moonrise. If you can't, bar the upstairs hall and wait for dawn. Hunger learns. It will try on your voices like coats. Do not look it in the eyes. You will feel something look back that isn't you. We stared at the list. I forced a smile that felt like it belonged to a different face. Someone had fun with a typewriter. Brooke nodded but didn't blink. "Where's the gun?" We searched. The kitchen drawers held twine, a rusty hatchet, a flare gun with 2 flares, and a box of matches wrapped in wax paper. In a broom closet off the hall, Maya found a bolt-action rifle with a cracked stock and an oil rag stuffed into the barrel. The rag came out clean. "Bullets?" Ethan asked. 4, Maya said, counting with the calm you use to steady your hands. "The note says half of that is real." "It says cut the number in half because we'll miss," I said. "We won't." I hated how certain I sounded. Brooke found a handheld tape recorder on a shelf. She clicked play. A man's voice, breathless and husky. "If you're in the house, you've been noticed. It wants you looking in, not out. Use the rifle for the startle, not to win. Don't run for the woods when it's quiet. Quiet means it's inside your circle. If it sings, plug your ears. It doesn't sing well, but it's learning." The tape clicked. The rest was static. "Okay," Ethan said, almost jovial. "We stay put. Barricade upstairs like the rules say, and what? Wait for dawn? What if the rules are a trap?" Brooke asked. "Then we pick a trap we understand," Maya said. We hauled a dresser across the upstairs hall and propped the rifle by the banister. The landing window looked out on a wedge of moon, thin and white as a fingernail. The tap-tap-tap started shortly after. Not at the door, not on the wall. Inside the wood. It felt like something polite trying to learn manners. Brooke whispered, "Ethan." He put a finger to his lips and shook his head, reminding her, "No names." She mouthed, "Sorry." The tapping continued. I opened the journal. The first entry was in a hunter's block letters. I took a shot at it in winter of '96, shot it again in '03. It didn't bleed either time. It took my voice the second time and used it to call me home. I had soup on the stove when I left, and the soup was still hot when I woke up on the stairs. The house keeps warmth where it wants it. If you're reading this, you're already choosing which of you makes it to morning. "Don't," Maya said and closed the book. The tapping stopped. The front door creaked open downstairs. Wind pressed the house's lungs. Then we heard it. A voice that sounded like mine, but not a recording, not an echo. My own cadence folded back to me, sweet and wrong. "Maya," it called gently. "Brooke? Ethan?" We held our breaths. The voice tried again, and it grew better. It smoothed the vowels, matched the hush I use when I'm afraid of waking someone I love. I found the creek. "Come see." Maya's hand gripped mine so hard our fingers hurt. Brooke began to cry silently, tears making tiny tracks in the dust on her face. The steps below us took their time, as if whoever wore them had very long legs and didn't like to hurry. The doorknob at the end of the hall turned almost, then stopped. The voice moved to the next door. It didn't open any. It didn't need to. It was learning the measure of the hall. Ethan raised the rifle and waited. The footsteps retreated. Silence, the kind that bruises. We waited until the window glass began to show the shape of trees again. Dawn. When we finally slept, it was in stutters, eyes half open. Morning came pale and brittle. We decided to move. Backpack, matches, flare gun, rifle. We'd make for the trailhead, we told each other, like there was still a map that could remember us. At the front door, the hunter's cap was gone. We pushed into the trees. The fog had gone, but the light still felt underwater. Every direction looked like a path until you took it, and then it had never been one. The first time we saw it, we didn't know. Distant. A figure a long way off, moving between trunks. Tall, too tall, antlers or bare branches crowning its head. It stepped with elegance like it didn't weigh anything. And we all blinked at the same time, and it was closer by 3 trees. "Back to the house," Maya said, knowing we had already been allowed to leave so it could hunt the space between. We ran. The thing didn't chase. Chasing implies interest, and it wasn't interested. It was attending, like a maitre d' making sure we found our seats. When we reached the porch, we realized we'd been circling for an hour. The house liked us again. Inside, we set the stove roaring because heat felt like a decision. The rules had said fire by seconds, not safety. Seconds, then we made a plan. The flare gun for signal if we actually found a trail. The matches for barricade fires if the doors failed. The rifle for the face, because superstition is a toolbox when truth is useless. "Don't look it in the eyes," Brooke reminded us, repeating the rule until it sounded like prayer. The tapping returned. Not experimental now, confident. I realized with a cold calm that it wasn't tapping with hands. It was tapping with teeth. That night it spoke with Ethan's mother's voice. Told him it had made lemon bars. Told him the road crew cleared the rock slide and the highway was open. He pressed his fists to his ears and still heard it, because the sound came through the housewood and the floor and the places where names live. When it used Maya's voice against me, I almost opened the door. She was saying what she actually would say. Liam, don't be brave. Be alive instead. She says that on real nights. She said it twice, and on the third time the word alive got curious, like the syllables had splinters. We burned the old curtains for light and stayed on the landing, our backs to each other. Brooke's breath grew ragged. I can't, Ethan, I need you to... It said his name, he answered. The thing was waiting for that. The end of the hall darkened, not with shadow but with indecision, like the house was forgetting how long the corridor was. The ceiling shivered. It was above us, and then it wasn't above us anymore because angles don't matter when hunger learns geometry. Ethan fired. The shot went through the dark and did something. Not a wound, but a misstep. A long pale arm like a peeled branch slid into sight and felt the air hand-opening like a question. Its fingers were too many or too patient. The antlers didn't look like bone up close. They looked like roots that had decided to become a crown. It made a sound that wasn't a roar. It was the sound of praying backwards. Maya grabbed the rifle. Downstairs now. We moved as one, the thing returning to the long part of the house so it could rearrange distance. In the parlor the stove blazed. Brooke took the hatchet in both hands. The front door rattled once and then sighed open, though no one touched it. Into the cellar, I said. Basements are where people die in movies, Brooke said with a laugh that had too many edges. Basements are walls, Maya said, and that was enough. The cellar welcomed us like a throat. We layered the racks and shelves across the door and piled anything that burned into a corner. Maya struck matches one by one until the simmer of flame and the stink of hot metal gave us a circle of light. I opened the journal again and flipped to the last entry. It is older than mercy. If you hear it mimic laughter, it is getting close to remembering joy. That's when it is most dangerous. I have one bullet left. If I take my own breath away, it can't wear my voice anymore. I'm sorry. We stared at the corpse. The hunter hadn't taken the last shot after all. Maybe he missed. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe the house convinced him to sleep. Slow footfalls above, boards stretching. The steps measured the kitchen. A soft scrape at the top of the cellar door. Almost tender. Then, tap, 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 patient. The bolt we'd slid into place trembled. Maya, I started and stopped. We'd been careful, but fear loosens habits. Saying her name almost opened something I didn't want opened. The door didn't break. It unfurled, wood fibers stringing and knitting back. Through the gap slid a head that wasn't a head, more like the idea of one, stretched and rethought by cold and hunger. It had eyes, if you called them that, cold dimples in a skull that never learned how to stop growing. Those pits looked at us the way winter looks at a map. Don't, Brooke whispered, squeezing the hatchet. The thing huffed, drawing air across scented memory. Then spoke, and the thing that spoke used Brooke's voice, saying, "It's not as bad up here. It's lovely. There's a warm room with quilts. Come see." Brooke made a sound that wasn't a word. Her shoulders shook. The thing laughed with my laugh then, trying it out like a child in a mirror. The sound was half right and half echo. That was the worst of it. It never needed our voices to hunt. It wanted them because it wanted the shape of human joy. "Flare," Maya said. I fired the first flare into the ceiling. White fire stitched the room with ragged day. The thing shrank back, not in fear, but in elegant distaste, like heat was beneath it. It withdrew, and in withdrawing it reached farther because rooms have more corners than we know. The second flare would have to be for the woods, if we ever reached them. "Now," Maya said. Up and out. It hates open. We shoved the barricade with our backs and bled into the hall. The front door gaped like an invitation. That should have scared us more than the thing itself, but it didn't. We made for it. The air outside was shockingly clean. Night had turned to a thin, pearly morning. Trees stood in ranks, pretending indifference. We ran. Behind us, the house made a sound like settling. Not collapsing, deciding. The forest took our noise and gave it back wrong, so every footstep sounded like two. The thing didn't follow fast. It paced us, letting panic choose the route. We came to a break in the trees. Not a trail exactly. A drainage cut, ferns trimmed by deer mouths. I fired the second flare straight up. It hung under the cloud like a red bead. For a heartbeat, I thought it was hope. Then I realized hope doesn't make a hiss like that. Ethan turned to watch for movement, and his foot snagged a root. He fell hard, air punching out of him. Brooke stopped. I grabbed Ethan under the shoulders. That's when we heard it, much closer than it should have been. Liam, 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 not an imitation this time. A call, not a command. A summons. It did not want my death. It wanted my company. Maya stepped between me and the trees, rifle up. "Eyes down," she said. "Don't look." We moved as three, dragging Ethan, who was trying to apologize. The trees tightened, then loosened, then tightened again. Distances kept changing their minds. "Left," Brooke said. "Right," Maya said. "Forward," I said, but it didn't matter. The forest turned forward into elsewhere. The thing moved in parallel, the way a river moves beside a road. We didn't see it. We did not look. But we felt it. The temperature dropped, not like weather, but like consent being withdrawn. "Stop," Maya said, and we stopped. She raised the rifle and fired into the air in the thing's direction. The shot sounded embarrassingly small. Then something in the trees leaned away, and we found space. "Run," Maya said, and we ran. It couldn't last. The forest patience outlives lungs, and ours were burning. Ethan stumbled again, and this time he didn't rise. The word sorry kept falling out of his mouth like coins. Brooke knelt. "We're not leaving you." The house's voice, not the thing's. The house's, exhaled between the trees like a chimney. It smelled like bread that never baked. I looked at Maya. She had 3 bullets left. Her hands didn't shake. "You go," she said, not to me alone, but to us. "I'll slow it. You get to the road." "There is no road," Brooke said. "Then find whatever the road used to be and call it that until it obeys." She kissed me on the cheek, and the kiss tasted like iron. "Don't be brave. Be alive instead," I finished. She smiled. "Which is the bravest thing I've ever seen." We left her. I don't know how long we ran. The flare smoke thinned and the morning grew teeth. Behind us, a sound that had avoided names finally found one. The Wendigo announced itself with a noise like antlers, scraping the inside of a church bell. I didn't look. I won't tell you what it did. I don't know exactly. I know the forest made room for it. Brooke stumbled to a stop. "Liam," she said softly. "Listen, I heard a bird." That meant nothing and everything. "Birds do not sing near hunger," the dossier had said between the lines. We'd walked out of a silence ring. The trees here had ordinary scars. The air held ordinary cold. We found the creek by accident. It looked smaller than any myth. We followed it because water keeps its own counsel and doesn't argue with compasses. The bed widened. The banks cut lower, and then we saw it, the bridge. Nothing fancy, just a corrugated span with reflectors that had gone blind. But it was a man-made line, and monsters hate lines they didn't draw. We crossed. I turned to help Brooke, and that's when I learned what mercy looks like when it belongs to something else. The thing didn't cross the bridge after us. It didn't need to. It leaned, and the shadow of it kept leaning, and Brooke looked up at the sky the way tired people look at ceilings. "Go," she said. "No, Liam." She said my name like herself, not like the forest saying it. Go. I did what the rules had taught me. I cut the number in half and made a bad choice into a slower bad choice. I went. A ranger station wears daylight like armor. The man who found me made coffee I couldn't drink and asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. He wrote down names. He called for search teams. They went out for 3 days. They found the house once and then couldn't find it again. They found the hunter's cap 20 yards from the bridge. They found the flare casing welded to a stone by heat I couldn't explain. They found tracks that looked like someone trying to walk human for the first time. They told me grief makes maps strange. They told me I was lucky. They asked finally what I wanted them to tell the families. Tell them the forest kept what it chose. Tell them the house is less a place than a promise. Tell them hunger learns. At night in the station bunk I heard a sound against the window that was almost rain and almost tapping. Tap. Tap, tap. I didn't answer when it said my name. I counted to half the number I thought I could manage and kept counting. When I finally slept, I dreamed of the journal. In the dream, there was one more page I hadn't read. I woke with the words in my mouth. If you make it out, don't tell people where the house is. The house already knows where people are. This morning, the ranger let me go. I walked to the edge of the lot and looked at the tree line. Sunlit, ordinary. Birds busy with their ordinary warbles. The bridge hums with pickup trucks and small talk. I told myself I'd never go back. Then a voice in the trees, not the houses. Not the things, my own voice as it used to be. Before the woods borrowed it, called softly, "Liam, I'm okay. Come see, I didn't turn. I didn't blink." I stood in the open and said nothing until the voice got bored and moved away, like fog deciding on another hill. If you're listening, remember, do not follow your name. Do not open a door for a voice that knows your secrets too soon. And if you ever find a house in the pines, with a stove that breathes and wallpaper that grows, antlers in the corners, walk away before the tapping begins, because the Wendigo is not a beast that hunts you. It is a hunger that auditions you, and once it likes your voice, it will keep asking for another story and another and another.